Time for tonight's rewrite. Since the moment President Obama announced that a Navy SEAL had killed Osama bin Laden, I, for one, have felt that there was no need for the president to authorize the release of photographs of the dead Osama bin Laden in order to prove that what he was saying was true. Just 4 days before the killing of Osama bin Laden, President Obama released documentation to prove something he had been saying for years was true. And it worked. The number of Americans who now believe the president was born outside the United States has dropped from 25% down to 10%, according to a new Washington Post poll. Republicans who now believe the president was born outside the United States dropped from 45% down to just 14%. The president had released legal documentation of his birth years ago, and it had been satisfactorily checked by many an enterprising journalist, but for a variety of ugly reasons, the madness that the president might be lying about his birth had infected nearly half of the Republicans in this country. The president's long-form birth certificate, the thing that the liars and doubters had been demanding for years, turned most of the doubters into believers instantly. People believe what they want to believe until they can't. Americans want to believe that Osama bin Laden is dead. The president's announcement was good enough for them. They took to the streets spontaneously to mark the end of the bin Laden decade. They needed no more proof. As the details emerged of DNA testing and face recognition and the deadly professionalism of SEAL Team 6, there was no reasonable room for doubt left that Osama bin Laden was dead. This time, the only reason to release further documentation that what the president was saying is true would be to convince people who in the age of Photoshop would remain unconvincible by photographs that Osama bin Laden is dead. None of the rationales I heard on this program or elsewhere for releasing the photographs moved me until I heard this one.
I'm all for healthy skepticism, and even though bin Laden's widow positively identified the body to Pakistani authorities, why wouldn't we release the headshot of bin Laden's headshot? Personally, the best reason in my mind for releasing the pictures is that we've been fighting this war for nearly 10 years. Thousands of U.S. deaths, tens of thousands of Iraqis and Afghanis have died, and we've seen nearly zero photographic evidence of it. Remember how long the media had to fight to show military coffins returning from overseas? You probably don't remember because you saw pictures of it the day they won the case and not since. Maybe we should always show pictures of bin Laden, pictures of our wounded service people, pictures of maimed innocent civilians. We can only make decisions about war if we see what war actually is, and not as a video game where bodies quickly disappear, leaving behind a shiny gold coin.
Jon Stewart has a point, a good point. Consider the Iraq War, just the Iraq War, the war that we didn't have to fight, the one I'm going to discuss further with Condoleezza Rice later in the program. 31,931 American soldiers have been wounded just in the Iraq War. How many of the wounded have you seen pictures of? A dozen? Maybe 24? 100, if you've watched some of the documentaries about them? 4,421 American soldiers have been killed in the Iraq War. How many of those funerals have you seen covered by national or local news media? If you live in Texas, you've probably seen a lot of them covered on your local news media. If you live in Boston, San Francisco, maybe you haven't seen too many. How many of those bodies of dead American soldiers have we seen pictures of? None. I'm not saying we should. I don't know how much of the real imagery of war we should see, but I know that Jon Stewart is right. We have not seen enough.